Hi, today we're going to talk about understanding qualitative coding. We're going to talk about the methodology, the types, applications, advantages, and disadvantages. So, what is qualitative coding? Qualitative coding is a method of categorizing and organizing qualitative data. And with this, it helps it helps the researcher to identify patterns, themes, and relationships amongst the qualitative data. And it converts raw textual data into meaningful insights. So when should we use qualitative coding? Well, we use it when we are analyzing interview transcripts. Maybe you have a focus group, um, and you ask questions of a focus group. If you did a survey with open-ended responses, that means you didn't limit yourself to yes and no answers or number ratings. You had open-ended questions where the person would have to write some narrative, or you did observations and you as the researcher recorded your observations. You would use qualitative coding in that instance. You can also use it when you explore themes in social science and education research. And it's useful in uncovering subjective experiences and subjective perspectives. So, what methodologies do we use? I'm sorry, here, trying to get stuff off my screen. What methodologies should we use in qualitative coding? Uh, you could do data collection, interviews, surveys, focus groups, field notes, observation notes, transcriptions. You could record conversations and then you convert that recorded conversation into text. I know genealogists use recorded conversations a lot when they're gathering data because older people like to talk rather than being asked a bunch of questions. So we're trying to trace our common ancestor from my maiden name. There's a common ancestor, and we know who he is, but we don't know where he came from. He just popped on the scene, no birth records or anything. So, talking to the older people in our family, we record those conversations, and our genealogist that we hired transcribes those. Initial coding, assigning labels to meaningful excerpts. So if you have some meaningful themes, maybe, well, I don't want to use a theme because that lends itself to thematic. But if you see a common thing that's coming amongst your participants, or they say some things that are meaningful, and you say, hey, I might want to categorize my data in this way. This is a very insightful way to do it. You can do that. Thematic analysis, when you identify recurring themes and patterns in your study, however you conduct your study. Types of qualitative coding. There's open coding. That's where you break your data into discrete concepts. Axial coding, where you can connect relationships between themes. You can use selective coding when you refine core themes that align with your research objectives. And in vivo coding, that's where you use the participants' own words as codes. So, what are the advantages of qualitative coding? Again, just like with focus group study, qualitative coding allows for deep analysis of complex social phenomena, and it captures rich contextual insights from participants. You would get more from this than you would out of a flat a study, or that's not what I want to say, a survey. And it provides a structure to large volumes of qualitative data. What are the disadvantages? It is time consuming and it's labor intensive. I mean, you have to go through each interview, each focus group response, categorize and determine what goes where. And then, it's just with like with the focus group study, when you use qualitative coding, one of the disadvantages is researcher bias. So that's going to influence coding decisions. I One of my students noticed the way that I graded papers, I didn't look at names. And I said that eliminates bias when I'm grading. And he was stunned that teachers had bias. I said, I'm giving partial credit. And I don't want to look at the student's name when I'm doing that. I want to be fair to everybody. And then with qualitative coding, it requires training to ensure that your data is consistent and reliable. Different populations and situations that you would use qualitative coding on: individual students, teachers, professionals, patients, groups. You can do a focus group, community discussion. Again, town halls could be a focus group. That's a community discussion. Workplace teams. So those are the types of populations. Situations, educational settings, healthcare research, social policy analysis. And this is some studies that could be coded. You could study, a researcher could study student perceptions of math anxiety. I have a discussion often with my students at the beginning of the year, throughout the middle of the year, that math is not a hereditary trait. So just because your grandfather was bad at math, that does not guarantee that you will be bad at math. And we talk about the things that contribute to good and not so good math grades. It might be study habits, and those are things we can fix. It's not in your DNA. Uh, Teachers' experience with classroom technology, that's a study. Parent attitudes toward remote learning, that's one that I really need to look into, because during the pandemic we had remote learning and we had a lot of different feedback, and that needs to be captured. I hope it's been captured already. Workplace diversity and inclusion discussions. And here are my references. Thank you for listening.